Get along so that you can benefit from the raw materials that you have in Africa. Because Congo alone will not be able to protect its coltan and its cobalt. It's not been able to protect the coltan. Look at it. The so-called tribal wars that people in the West read about in the Congo, Eastern Congo, those are not tribal wars. How can you have so-called tribal wars when at the same time people are digging resources from the ground and exporting it to Europe from the same location where the so-called tribal wars are going on? These are wars that are financed by multinational companies. They give weapons, they give money to the...
Welcome to Wake Up Blaq. Educate and enlighten.
Please explain why coltan is integral to the tech industry and why Africans are not benefiting from it.
All right, in addition to coltan, of course, cobalt as well. Coltan goes into most of the electronic equipment everywhere in the world. So if it's a smartphone, if it's a computer, if it's parts of the instruments in planes and sophisticated weapons, coltan is used. And there are only few countries in the world that have it. Congo, in particular, has most of the deposits in the world, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Yet, the average income of people in the Congo is probably less than 600 US dollars, as opposed to European countries where the average income ranges from $40,000 to $60,000. And why is this? Even though electronic equipment is found everywhere in the world, in every country, no matter how remote the country is. How is it that Congo is not very wealthy? Because Congo does not manufacture. Congo sells it as raw material, raw minerals, then goes into the factories in the industrialized countries. And it's not by accident that most of the industrialized countries, all of them rather, are former colonial powers. Now you have new ones, of course, like China, for example, is an industrial power now. And China was never really a colonial power, not in Africa anyway, even though it benefits from Africa's resources, just as the European countries do. And all of them get the materials for cheap. And once they go back to their factories in their countries and they manufacture the products, the smartphones, the computers, the price compared to the raw material is exponentially, I don't even know by what magnitude, maybe 50, maybe 100 times higher than the value that they get for the raw coltan. And that applies to cobalt as well. And cobalt is increasingly going to be much more important, perhaps even than coltan, because cobalt goes into making the batteries for these electric cars. And as you know, electric cars is the way of the future because of the environmental concern, the climatic issues. So in the next 10, 15, 20 years, it's all going to be electric cars. And in order to power those vehicles, they're going to need the cobalt. And the Democratic Republic of the Congo has 60% of that. So now, what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting that even if you can't get along politically, and I'm speaking directly to the African countries, get along so that you can benefit from the raw materials that you have in Africa. Because Congo alone will not be able to protect its coltan and its cobalt. It's not been able to protect the coltan. Look at it. The so-called tribal wars that people in the West read about in the Congo, Eastern Congo, those are not tribal wars. How can you have so-called tribal wars when at the same time people are digging resources from the ground and exporting it to Europe from the same location where the so-called tribal wars are going on? These are wars that are financed by multinational companies. They give weapons, they give money to the neighboring countries like Rwanda and Uganda, for example. And then they send their soldiers there. They're basically working like mercenaries for the West. They kill people, they depopulate the area, people run away, they plunder the resources, then they ship it to Europe, to North America, through Rwanda and through Uganda. Why? Because they don't want to pay the taxes to the government of the Congo. say they would rather heap African bodies to get the minerals for cheap. So the neighboring countries, first of all, of course, you need progressive leadership. If you have reactionary leaders in both Rwanda and Uganda, General Kagame, General Museveni in Uganda, it's not going to work. So it begins with the leadership. You need to have progressive leaders like we had Kwame Nkrumah, of course, in the 1960s. We have Thomas Sankara in the 1980s. These are the type of leaders that really want Africa to benefit from its resources to build wealth and prosperity in Africa. So if they came together, they would be able to protect Congo and say Congo and the rest of Africa is going to get the fair value for the cobalt, and you're going to have to pay us, and you have no choice, because without the cobalt, you won't be able to manufacture the batteries that go into the electric vehicles.